The stars looked different today. Senior navigator Zixathara had been watching space for 20 years, but something felt wrong. Her 4 eyes moved across the control panel of the Galactic Survey Vessel Harmony's edge. The ship was 3 days into their mission to map the outer edge of the Kepler 442 system. "Captain Velnari, I am getting strange readings," she called out. Her voice carried the slight hiss that all her people made when they spoke. The Altarian captain turned from his conversation with the weapons officer. His blue skin was darker than usual, which meant he was worried about something. "What kind of readings?" Captain Velnari asked. He walked over to Zixthara's station. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. The crew of 40 beings from 12 different worlds all stopped their work to listen. There is something big in the asteroid belt. Very big. The sensors show metal, but not any metal we know. The energy readings are off the charts. Zixathara's claws clicked on her keyboard as she tried to get better readings. "Captain, this thing is 3 times bigger than our largest warships. The..." Captain's skin went even darker. In his 25 years of service, he had never seen anything that could make his best navigator sound scared. "Put it on the main screen." The bridge lights dimmed as the main viewing screen came to life. What they saw made several crew members gasp. Floating among the rocks was a ship unlike anything in their databases. It was huge and black, with strange markings covering its hull. The metal seemed to eat light instead of reflecting it. Scars and burn marks covered every surface, as if the ship had been through countless battles. "By the 7 moons," whispered Chief Science Officer Clymora. She was from the same world as the captain, and her skin had also turned dark with fear. "What could have built something like that?" "Run a full scan," ordered Captain Velnari. "I want to know everything about that ship. Where it came from, what it's made of, and if there's anyone alive on it." For the next hour, every scanner on the Harmony's edge focused on the mysterious vessel. The results made the crew more nervous with each passing minute. The ship's hull was made from metals that did not exist in any galactic database. The energy readings showed weapon systems far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Most frightening. Of all, the computer analysis showed the ship came from a Class 15 death world. Chief Science Officer Clymora checked her readings 3 times before she spoke. "Captain, the computer says this ship is from a Class 15 death world. That is impossible." "Explain," said the captain, though his voice showed he did not want to hear the answer. "Class 15 death worlds are the worst worlds we know of. The radiation levels alone would kill any known life form in minutes. The surface temperatures are hundreds of degrees. The atmosphere is poison. Nothing could live there, let alone build. Spaceships." The bridge fell silent. Every being there knew what Class 15 death worlds were like. They were the nightmare worlds that scientists used to scare students. Worlds so deadly that even looking at them through a telescope made people nervous. "Could the readings be wrong?" asked the captain. "I have run the tests 5 times. The metal composition, the energy patterns, even the way the ship is built all match Class 15 signatures. Whatever made this ship comes from a world that should have killed them long before they learned to make fire." Navigator Zixathara spoke, up from her station. "Captain, I am detecting more energy from inside the ship. Something is still active in there." The captain made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. "Send an emergency signal to the Galactic Council. Tell them, we have found evidence of a species from a Class 15 death world, and they have space travel technology far beyond our own." Within 6 hours, the quiet space around the asteroid belt became crowded with warships. 12 vessels from different member worlds of the Galactic Council arrived with weapons ready. The largest was the battleship Iron Will, commanded by Admiral Torvek of the Altarian Defense Force. Admiral Torvek was old, even for his long-lived people. He had fought in 3 wars and won them all. His dark blue skin was covered in the scars of battle, and his 4 arms moved with the speed of a much younger being. When he spoke, Everyone listened. "Show me this Death World ship," he ordered as soon as he arrived on the bridge of the Harmony's edge. The main screen showed the massive black vessel still floating among the asteroids. Admiral Torvek studied it for a long time without speaking. Finally, he turned to Captain Velnari. "How certain are you that this comes from a Class 15 world? The science officer has run every test we have. The evidence is clear." Admiral Torvek nodded slowly. "Then we have a problem bigger than anything the galaxy has faced. If a species from a death world has this kind of technology, they could destroy every world in the galaxy." "What are your orders, Admiral?" asked Captain Velnari. "We destroy it before whatever made it comes back to get it." Chief Science Officer Claymora stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, we should study it first. Think of what we could learn." "I am thinking of what we could lose," replied the Admiral. "If beings from a Class 15 world return and find us studying their ship, they might decide we are a threat. I will not risk the lives of billions for scientific curiosity." The Admiral was about to give the order to fire when Navigator Zixthara called out, "Admiral, wait! The energy readings from inside the ship just spiked. Something big just turned on." All eyes turned to the main screen. The black ship still looked dead, but the sensors showed massive energy movement inside its hull. Whatever was in there was waking up. "All ships, prepare to fire," ordered Admiral Torvek. "We will not get a better chance." But before any ship could fire, the Death World vessel began to move. Slowly at first, then faster, it turned to face the fleet of galactic warships. Ancient weapon systems that had been sleeping for years came to life. The ship's hull began to glow with energy that made the sensors scream warnings. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Torvek felt real fear. Whatever was on that ship was about to wake up fully, and the galaxy was about to meet its first species from a Class 15 death world. The peaceful age of galactic exploration was about to end. The Galactic Council chamber was silent except for the quiet hum of life support systems. For the first time in decades, no alien representative spoke. They all stared at the holographic display showing the results of the demonstration. The numbers didn't lie, but they were hard to believe. High Counselor Vexithari finally broke the silence. His crystalline voice was quieter than usual. "The demonstration results have been verified by all observation teams. Human vessels completed every test scenario with a success rate of 94%. Allied fleet success rate was 67%. A murmur ran through the assembled aliens, but it was different from before. Instead of dismissive laughter, there was confusion and something that might have been respect. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood at the center of the chamber just as she had 30 days earlier. But the atmosphere had changed completely. The aliens who had mocked human technology were now studying the data with growing amazement. The Saurian delegate was the first to speak. "How did your obsolete ships outperform our most advanced vessels? Our computers cannot explain these results." Kate walked to the center of the speaking area. "Honored counselors, the answer is simple. You've been measuring the wrong things. You looked at our technology and saw that it was old, so you assumed it was inferior. But age and effectiveness are not the same thing." She gestured to the holographic display showing images of human ships. "Our vessels weren't built for elegance or efficiency. They were built by a species that expected the worst possible outcome and planned accordingly." Admiral Parker's image appeared on the communication screen from the Defiant. "Every human ship is designed on the assumption that everything will go wrong at the worst possible moment. Our weapons will jam, our engines will fail, our computers will crash, and our communication systems will be destroyed." Chief Engineer Cooper's face appeared next to Parker's. "So we build everything with backups. Then we build backups for the backups. Then we make sure everything can work without computers, without power, and without any outside help." The Clixon ambassador clicked its mandibles together nervously. "But this approach is inefficient. It requires more resources, more weight, more complexity, Captain Sullivan answered from the Liberty's bridge. Yes, it does. But when you're floating in space with half your systems destroyed and enemies shooting at you, efficiency doesn't matter. What matters is still being able to fight back. The Zentari delegate's crystalline body flickered with confused light patterns. Your weapon systems particularly puzzle us. Our energy weapons are more powerful and have greater range. Yet your kinetic systems achieved better results. Commander Ben Foster smiled from the Nightfall's bridge. Your energy weapons are predictable. We can see where they're aimed and when they'll fire. Our projectiles change course after we shoot them. They split apart, they speed up, they slow down. You never know exactly where they'll hit until they do. The Nexus Collective's geometric ships pulsed with blue light as they processed this information. Our analysis indicates that human weapons sacrifice maximum efficiency for unpredictability. This is contrary to optimal design principles. That's the point, Admiral Parker replied. You've spent thousands of years perfecting your technology. You've made it as efficient and elegant as possible, but you've also made it predictable and vulnerable. The Altarian observer shimmered with confused energy patterns. But your stealth technology should not work. Our sensors can detect quantum fluctuations at the subatomic level, yet we failed to locate your vessels. Captain Foster was happy to explain. Your sensors are designed to detect sophisticated stealth systems. Energy absorption fields, dimensional displacement, quantum camouflage. Our stealth is much simpler. We just make our ships too cold and too quiet for your sensors to notice. The truth was beginning to dawn on the alien representatives. Human technology wasn't primitive because humans didn't understand advanced science. It was primitive on purpose, designed to work when advanced science failed. Kate walked closer to the alien representatives. For 50 years, you've looked at humanity and seen a backward species that stumbled into space travel through luck. You saw our crude weapons and simple ships and assumed we were inferior. She paused and looked around the chamber. But you never asked why we built things this way. You never wondered if there might be a reason for our choices. The holographic display changed to show images from human history. Battles fought with primitive weapons against impossible odds. Ships damaged beyond repair but still fighting. Crews improvising solutions with nothing but tools and determination. We learned to build things this way because we had to, Kate continued. We come from a world where survival meant being tougher than everything trying to kill you. We learned that the best technology isn't the most advanced, it's the most reliable. Captain Sarah Blake appeared on the communication screen from the Valkyrie. Our fighters don't have the best computers or the fastest engines, but they'll keep flying even when half their systems are destroyed. Our pilots can fight manually if they have to. The revelation was spreading through the chamber like a wave. The aliens were beginning to understand that they had completely misunderstood human technology and capabilities. High Counselor Vexathari leaned forward on his crystal throne. Ambassador Morrison, are you saying that human technology is intentionally primitive? Not primitive, Kate corrected. Robust. There's a difference between simple and stupid. Our technology is simple, because simple things work when complex things break. The chamber erupted in discussion as alien representatives tried to process this new understanding. Their elegant ships and sophisticated weapons suddenly seemed fragile compared to human engineering that could function under any conditions. The Saurian delegate hissed thoughtfully. If human ships are this capable, how many vessels do you actually possess? Kate's smile was answer enough, but Admiral Parker provided the details. What you saw today was a small training fleet. Our total naval capacity is classified, but I can tell you that every human colony has ships like these. Every orbital station, every mining operation, every exploration vessel. The implications were staggering. The aliens had assumed that humanity's few visible ships represented their entire space capability. The truth was that human space was filled with vessels they had never bothered to detect. "But why hide this from us?" asked the Altarian observer. "Why allow us to believe you were weak?" Kate's expression became serious. "Because we've learned that the galaxy can be a dangerous place. It's better to be underestimated than to be seen as a threat. Until today, you thought we were harmless primitives. That was exactly what we wanted you to think." High Counselor Vexithari called for order as the chamber buzzed with excited conversation. "The Council must vote on the original motion to expel humanity from the Federation." The vote was unanimous. Not to expel humanity, but to reclassify them as a major strategic power with full rights and privileges. More importantly, several species immediately requested technology sharing agreements and joint military exercises. As the session ended, Kate Morrison walked out of the chamber with a satisfied expression. Captain Sullivan fell into step beside her. "Think they learned their lesson, Ambassador?" Kate looked back at the chamber where alien representatives were still arguing about the implications of what they had witnessed. "They learned that old doesn't mean obsolete, Jake. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best solutions." The human delegation left the council chambers, but the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The species that had been dismissed, as primitive, had revealed themselves to be perhaps the most dangerous military force in known space, and they had done it with ships that most aliens would have thrown away as junk. Behind them, the council continued debating long into the night, trying to understand how they had been so wrong about everything. The second phase of the demonstration began with movement tests through the asteroid field. The alien ships went first, showing off their advanced navigation systems. The Zentari dreadnought moved like a dancer, its energy fields pushing asteroids gently aside. The Nexus pyramids calculated perfect paths through the rocks, never wasting a single unit of energy. High Counselor Vexithari watched from his command ship as the alien vessels completed their runs. Each one was flawless, elegant, and efficient. "Impressive as always," he announced. "Now let us see how primitive human technology handles the same course." The human fleet's approach was completely different. Instead of avoiding the asteroids, they seemed to embrace the chaos. The USS Liberty charged straight into the thickest part of the field, its hull scraping against rocks that would have been carefully avoided by any alien ship. Captain Sullivan stood calmly on his bridge as alarms sounded around him. "Damage report," he called out. "Minor hull scratches on decks 4 and 7, came the reply. "All systems normal." The alien observers were confused. The Liberty had taken direct hits that should have damaged its hull, yet the ship continued without slowing down. The Saurian destroyer's commander hissed in surprise. "How are they maintaining structural integrity after those impacts?" "Chief," Engineer Cooper's voice came over the communication system from the Liberty's engine room. "Our armor isn't made from fancy exotic materials, it's layered steel and ceramic composite. When something hits us, the energy gets spread out across multiple layers instead of focusing on one point. But the real shock came when the human ships started working together in ways that seemed impossible. The destroyer Nightfall vanished completely from sensors while still moving at full speed. Other ships began firing their weapons, not at targets, but at empty space where the invisible destroyer was moving. The Clixon ambassador's mechanical voice crackled with confusion. "Why are they firing at nothing? Have their targeting systems failed?" The answer became clear when the empty space began firing back. The Nightfall was still there, completely invisible but coordinating perfectly with the rest of the fleet. The other ships were providing covering fire for a vessel they couldn't even see. "How are they communicating with the stealth ship?" demanded the Nexus Collective. "Our sensors detect no quantum entanglement signals, no subspace transmissions, no energy broadcasts of any kind." Commander Lynn Hayes answered from the medical frigate Mercy. "We use multiple backup communication systems, radio waves, laser signals, and even coded flashes from our navigation lights. If one system fails, we switch to another." The alien fleets watched in growing amazement as the human ships performed maneuvers that should have been impossible without. perfect electronic coordination. But they were doing it with systems so primitive that alien sensors couldn't even detect them. The carrier Valkyrie opened its launch bays and released swarms of fighters. The small craft didn't move like alien fighters, which flowed through space like fish swimming through water. Human fighters moved aggressively, darting and weaving in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully planned. Captain Sarah. Blake watched from the Valkyrie's control center as her pilots engaged holographic targets in the asteroid field. Phantom Squadron, go full stealth. Hammer Squadron, begin attack run Alpha. Ghost Squadron, start jamming. The alien observers tried to track the human fighters, but found it nearly impossible. The small craft seemed to disappear and reappear at random, striking targets with weapons that didn't fit any known categories. Their fighter craft are using kinetic weapons, reported the Altarian observer. But the projectiles are changing direction during flight. This should be impossible without guidance systems that we cannot detect. The truth was that human fighters used micro-thrusters built into each projectile. The guidance systems were so simple they barely registered as technology to alien sensors, but they allowed human pilots to hit targets around corners and behind cover. But the most impressive display came when the human fleet began taking simulated damage. The test included scenarios where ships were supposed to be disabled or destroyed. The alien vessels handled this by either avoiding damage completely or shutting down when their shields failed. The human ships did neither. When the USS Thunderbolt took a simulated hit that should have destroyed its main weapons, the crew simply switched to backup systems. When those failed, they improvised with tools and spare parts. Chief Engineer Danny Martin was working in the Thunderbolt's weapon bay when the simulation hit. "Port railgun is down," he reported calmly, "switching to manual control and local power." Within minutes, the supposedly destroyed weapon was firing again, not at full power and not with computer guidance, but it was working. The alien observers watched in disbelief as human crews repaired damage that should have been impossible to fix. "This violates all known principles of spacecraft design," the Zentari weapons officer protested. "When a system is destroyed, it cannot simply be repaired." In the middle of combat, Admiral Parker's voice came through clearly from the Defiant. "That's because your ships are built for perfection. Ours are built for survival. Every system has backups, every backup has alternatives, and every alternative can be jury-rigged if necessary." The demonstration reached its climax when the human fleet faced a scenario that had been designed to be impossible. Multiple simulated enemies attacking from all directions, with jamming that blocked most communication systems and weapons that could penetrate any known armor. The alien ships tried the scenario first. Despite their advanced technology, they were quickly overwhelmed. Their elegant solutions broke down when faced with chaos they hadn't been designed to handle. The human fleet's response was different. Instead of trying to maintain perfect formation and coordination, they adapted to the chaos. Ships that lost communication switched to pre-planned backup signals. Weapons that were jammed switched to different targeting methods. Crews that were cut off from Central Command made their own decisions. Captain Pete Crawford watched from the reconnaissance ship Shadowhawk as the battle simulation unfolded around him. His ship was completely invisible to everyone, friend and enemy alike, but he was coordinating the entire human response using nothing more than carefully timed radio bursts that sounded like random static. The result was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. The human fleet didn't just survive the impossible scenario, they won it, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through adaptability and redundancy that made them almost impossible to completely disable. "How is this possible?" High Counselor Vexathari asked, his crystalline voice showing genuine confusion. "Our analysis shows that human technology should have failed completely under these conditions." Kate Morrison smiled from the Liberty's bridge. "Counselor, that's exactly the point. Your technology is designed to work perfectly under ideal conditions. Ours is designed to keep working when everything goes wrong." The alien fleet floated in stunned silence as the human demonstration came to an end. Everything they thought they knew about technology and warfare had been turned upside down in a single day. The Kepler system had been chosen for the demonstration because it was neutral territory. No single alien species controlled it, and the Galactic Council maintained a testing facility on the fourth planet. The system's asteroid belt would provide the perfect testing ground for what was about to happen. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty as it approached the demonstration zone. Through the main viewing screen, she could see alien ships arriving from all directions. Each vessel represented the finest technology their species could produce. The Zentari dreadnought Cosmic Fury was the first to arrive. It was massive, nearly twice the size of any human ship. Its crystalline hull glowed with internal energy, and weapons ports lined its surface like jewels. The ship moved with impossible grace for something so large, its gravitic drives bending. Space around it. Captain Jake Sullivan watched the alien vessel with professional interest. "Look at that thing," he said quietly. "It's beautiful. I'll give them that. Probably cost more than our entire fleet to build." Kate nodded, but said nothing. She was watching the other ships arrive. The Nexus Machine Collective had sent 3 geometric warships that looked like floating pyramids made of black metal. Each one was perfectly symmetrical and moved with mechanical precision. No wasted motion, no unnecessary energy expenditure. Kaig, Saurian Empire's contribution was a sleek destroyer that looked like a giant blade cutting through space. Its hull was so smooth it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Energy fields flickered around its weapon systems, ready to unleash. Devastating plasma bursts. Even the peaceful Altarians had sent an observer vessel. It looked more like a work of art than a spaceship, all flowing curves and soft light. Its sensors were so advanced they could probably count the atoms in nearby asteroids. "Quite a collection," Sullivan observed. "They really brought their best. Toys to show off." More ships continued to arrive. The insectoid Clixon sent a vessel that looked like a giant metal wasp, complete with wing-like energy projectors. The aquatic Satani brought a ship that seemed to flow like water even in the vacuum of space. Each alien vessel was a masterpiece of engineering and design. High Counselor Vexithari's voice came over the communication system from his command ship. "All vessels are now in position. The demonstration may begin when the human fleet arrives." That was the cue Kate had been waiting for. She pressed a button on her command chair. "Admiral Parker, you may proceed." 20 light minutes away, Admiral Parker received the signal. She was floating in space near the edge of the asteroid field, completely invisible to every sensor in the system. Around her, the human fleet waited in perfect silence. "All ships," Parker announced, "execute Revelation Protocol. Let's give them a show they'll never forget." The first sign that something was happening came from the Altarian observer ship. Its sophisticated sensors detected a slight temperature change in what appeared to be empty space. The ship's commander, a being of pure energy, tried to focus the sensors on the anomaly. "Curious," the Altarian communicated to the other ships. "I am detecting thermal signatures where none should exist." Before anyone could respond, space began to shimmer. It started as a barely visible distortion, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Then the distortion grew stronger and shapes began to appear. The USS Thunderbolt materialized first, its massive bulk suddenly filling what had been empty space moments before. Its railgun turrets were already trained on designated targets in the asteroid field. The ship looked like a flying fortress, all angles and armor plating. The alien observers were stunned. The Zentari dreadnought's sensors had shown nothing, absolutely nothing, in that area of space. Yet now, a human battleship sat there as if it had always been present. But the Thunderbolt was just the beginning. More ships appeared around the asteroid field, each one becoming visible as they dropped their stealth systems. The carrier Valkyrie emerged from behind a large asteroid, its launch bays already opening. The destroyer Nightfall simply faded into view like a ghost becoming solid. The Clixon ambassador's mechanical voice crackled over the communication system. "How is this possible? Our sensors detected no approaching vessels." Admiral Parker's voice came from the Defiant, as it too became visible. "That's because we've been here for 3 hours, waiting for you to notice us." The alien fleet was in chaos. Every ship was frantically scanning the area, trying to understand how an entire human fleet had appeared without detection. Their sensors showed that the space had been empty, but now dozens of human vessels filled the demonstration zone. Captain Ben Foster smiled from the bridge of the Nightfall. His ship had been floating less than a kilometer from the Saurian destroyer for the past hour. The alien vessel's sensors had passed right through his ship without detecting anything unusual. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Parker," came the announcement. "Begin demonstration sequence Alpha. Show our guests what old-fashioned engineering can do." The human ships began to move, and immediately the aliens noticed something wrong. The vessels didn't move like modern spacecraft. They didn't glide smoothly through space using gravitic drives or energy manipulation. Instead, they moved with purpose and aggression, like predators stalking prey. The USS Liberty led the formation toward the designated target area. The ship's movements were precise, but different from anything the aliens had seen. It didn't waste energy on elegant maneuvers or show-off displays. Every motion had a purpose. "Targets are designated," Captain Sullivan announced to his crew. "All weapons, prepare for demonstration firing." The first target was a large asteroid that had been marked with sensor beacons. The alien ships had already shown their capabilities against similar targets, using energy weapons that turned rock into vapor in seconds. The Liberty's approach was different. Its main guns swiveled to track the target, but they didn't look like modern weapons. They were clearly kinetic systems, designed to throw solid projectiles rather than energy beams. "Fire," Sullivan ordered. The railgun discharge was visible as a brief flash of electromagnetic energy. The projectile itself was invisible, moving too fast for normal vision to track. It struck the asteroid with devastating effect. The alien observers expected to see the rock shattered into pieces. What they saw instead shocked them. The asteroid didn't just break apart. It exploded outward in a perfect sphere of debris, each piece moving at precisely calculated velocities. "Fascinating," the Altarian observer communicated. "The projectile did not simply penetrate the target. It delivered kinetic energy in a manner that maximized structural disruption." The Zentari weapons officer was studying the sensor readings. The impact pattern suggests multiple detonations occurred simultaneously throughout the asteroid's structure. "How did a single projectile achieve this?" Captain Sullivan was happy to explain. "Our rounds aren't just chunks of metal. They're designed to fragment in specific ways after penetration. Each fragment becomes a separate projectile, all timed to detonate at the optimal moment." But the real surprise came next. More human ships began firing at other targets, and each one showed a different approach to the same problem. The destroyer Hammer used guided projectiles that changed course multiple times during flight. The frigate Anvil fired rounds that split into dozens of smaller munitions just before impact. The alien weapons were more powerful in terms of raw energy output, but the human weapons were achieving better results. Where alien energy beams could be predicted and potentially countered, the human kinetic systems were unpredictable and adaptable. "This is impossible," the Nexus Collective communicated through its geometric warships. "Our computational models show that projectile weapons are inferior to directed energy systems in every measurable way." Admiral Parker's response came through clearly. "Your models assume perfect conditions and unlimited energy. Our weapons were designed for the real universe where everything goes wrong and resources are limited." The demonstration was just beginning, but already the alien observers were starting to understand that they had made a fundamental error in judging human technology. The encrypted message reached Admiral Lisa Parker 3 days after the council meeting. She sat in her command chair aboard the UES Defiant, reading the words on her personal screen. The bridge around her was quiet except for the steady hum of the old fusion reactor and the soft beeping of monitoring systems. Lisa had been expecting this message for years. She looked around her bridge and saw equipment that most aliens would call ancient. The control panels were covered with physical switches and buttons instead of holographic displays. Thick cables ran along the walls where other ships used wireless connections. Everything looked heavy and crude compared to modern alien technology. "Commander Hayes," she called to her first officer. "Signal all fleet commanders. Priority Alpha. Tell them it's time to wake up the old ladies." Commander Lynn. Hayes looked up from her station. Her hands paused over a keyboard that actually had physical keys. "All of them, Admiral? Even the museum ships?" "Especially the museum ships," Lisa replied. She stood and walked to the main viewing screen. Outside, she could see other human vessels, floating in the darkness of space. They were hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, where no alien sensors ever looked. The human fleet had been here for decades, waiting and watching. To alien eyes, these ships would look like floating scrap metal. Their hulls were made of steel and titanium instead of exotic alien composites. Their engines used simple fusion reactions instead of the complex energy systems other species preferred. Lisa pressed a button on her chair's armrest. Throughout the hidden fleet, communication systems came alive. "This is Admiral Parker to all vessels. Authorization code Yankee 77. Begin full activation sequence." Across the asteroid field, ships that had been sleeping for years began to stir. The USS Thunderbolt powered up its massive railgun turrets. Each gun was the size of a building and fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. Other alien weapons used energy beams that could be deflected or absorbed, but a chunk of metal moving at thousands of miles per second was harder to stop. Captain Ben Foster stood on the bridge of the stealth destroyer Nightfall. His ship looked different from the others. Its hull was painted black and covered with strange angles that seemed to hurt the eyes. Where other human ships were built for strength, the Nightfall was built to disappear. "Chief Martin," Foster called to his engineer. "Bring the stealth systems online, full spectrum suppression." Chief Engineer Danny Martin looked at his control panel. It was covered with gauges and switches that looked like they belonged in an old factory. "Aye, Captain. Activating thermal dampeners, electromagnetic scrubbers, and acoustic mufflers." The Nightfall began to fade from sensors. Its hull temperature dropped to match the surrounding space. Its engines were wrapped in layers of metal that absorbed sound and heat. Even its radio signals were filtered through systems that made them look like natural background noise. Other ships were waking up around the asteroid field. The carrier Valkyrie opened its massive launch bays. Inside were hundreds of small fighter craft that moved unlike anything else in space. While alien fighters relied on smooth curves and energy fields, human fighters were angular and aggressive. They looked like they had been built for war by people who expected to lose and wanted to take as many enemies with them as possible. Commander Sarah Blake stood in the Valkyrie's flight control center. Around her, pilots were running final checks on their fighters. These were not the sleek aircraft that aliens used. Human fighters were covered with armor plating and carried weapons that could punch through almost anything. "All squadrons report ready," Blake announced. "Phantom Squadron shows full stealth capability. Hammer Squadron has all kinetic weapons loaded. Ghost Squadron reports electronic warfare systems are online." On the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Parker watched as her fleet came back to life. Each ship was different, designed for a specific purpose. The medical frigate Mercy looked like a floating hospital, but its armor was thick enough to survive in the middle of a battle. The communication ship Herald carried enough radio equipment to talk to every human colony at the same time. "Admiral," Commander Hayes reported, "all ships are reporting green across the board. Fleet composition is as follows: 12 battleships, 8 carriers, 16 destroyers, 24 frigates, and 36 support vessels. Lisa nodded. To alien eyes, this would look like a small fleet of ancient ships. They would see the crude construction, the simple weapons, and the basic technology. They would not understand what they were really looking at. Chief Engineer Cooper came onto the bridge carrying a data pad. His uniform was stained with grease, and his hands were dirty from working on the engines. "Admiral, I've finished the fleet-wide. Systems check. Everything looks good, but I have to say some of these ships haven't moved under their own power in 50 years. That's exactly why they're perfect for what we need to do," Parker replied. She turned to look at Cooper. "How do you think alien sensors will react to ships this old?" Cooper grinned. "They won't know what to make of us. Their computers are programmed to detect modern energy signatures. Our fusion reactors burn too cold and too clean. Our engines produce the wrong kind of radiation. Our weapons don't fit any known categories." The truth was that human technology had developed along a completely different path than alien science. While other species had spent thousands of years perfecting elegant solutions and efficient systems, humans had built everything expecting it to break at the worst possible moment. Captain Pete Crawford was aboard the reconnaissance ship Shadowhawk. His vessel was designed to gather information without being detected. Unlike alien scout ships that used expensive cloaking technology, the Shadowhawk relied on being too boring to notice. "Sensors are passive only," Crawford reported to his crew. "We're running silent and deep. To anyone watching, we'll look like another piece of space junk." The Shadowhawk's hull was covered with materials that absorbed sensor beams instead of reflecting them. Its engines were wrapped in layers of insulation that made them almost invisible to heat detectors. Even its computer systems were shielded to prevent electromagnetic leakage. Throughout the fleet, similar preparations were taking place. Each ship was a masterpiece of paranoid engineering. Every system had backups, every backup had alternatives, and every alternative could work independently if everything else failed. Admiral Parker received reports from all her ship commanders. The USS Thunderbolt was ready with its railguns loaded. The Nightfall had achieved full stealth. The Valkyrie's fighters were armed and ready. The Mercy had its medical bays prepared for casualties. Every ship in the fleet was ready for whatever came next. "All ships, this is Admiral Parker," she announced over the fleet communication system. "For 50 years, the galaxy has looked at human technology and seen primitive junk. They think our ships are weak because they're old. They think our weapons are crude because they're simple. They think our crews are incompetent because we don't use their fancy computers." She paused and looked around her bridge. Every officer was listening carefully. "In 30 days, we're going to show them the difference between obsolete and battle-tested. We're going to prove that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. We're going to demonstrate that human engineering isn't just different, it's superior." The fleet began to move. Slowly at first, then with growing confidence, the ancient ships left their hiding places among the asteroids. They formed up in a formation that looked simple, but was actually quite complex. Each ship knew exactly where it belonged and what its job would be. As the human fleet headed toward the demonstration zone, alien sensors throughout the galaxy remained completely blind to their passage. The ships were too cold, too quiet, and too different to register on detection systems designed for modern technology. Admiral Parker smiled as she watched the stars ahead. The aliens were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy was the one you couldn't see coming.